No. Totally calm and composed.
There you
ready
go.
for this great slot.
Sarah, how are you? Good morning to you.
I'm exhausted. Up and down the country. I was in Ennis yesterday. Worth every single mile.
Right. So, we were talking about this a little bit earlier on. Colin was giving out about the work rate of the Cork forwards. And like, they just got beaten by a point by Clare in like a game where Clare have reasserted themselves as the natural pretenders to the crown of Limerick.
I woke up this morning cross.
Did you?
It was the game that Cork didn't play well in and could have got a result.
Right.
So that first half, horses for courses. Bit surprised Pat Ryan went with Harnedy, Lehan, Horgan, because Adam Hogan and Rory Hayes, the speed, the pace, it was a game for Shane Kingston. It was a game for Robbie Flynn, but we obviously didn't have it. But it was a game for pace. And I think when I looked at the second game, and I'm going to do a juxtaposition here, Tip brought in Seamus Callan late, gets his score. Graham Mulcahy comes in late for Limerick, gets his score, gets the hand pass off for Tom Morrissey. Cork didn't hold a man back, didn't hold a Harnedy back, a Lehan back or a Horgan back, and then they had nothing to bring on. And I know Kingston came on late, but he came on too late.
Okay. And yet, it took a 74th minute winner
to win it. I know, but this is the problem with Cork. They do sublime things because they've done ridiculous things. And every game they've to come up with something incredible to bring them back into a game. If you remember against Tip a couple of weeks ago, they had a mad high press to get the 2 late goals. And then against Clare, they didn't do it. So Diarmuid Ryan ends up being the saviour for Clare because Cork went away from what got them a result against Tip and got them a result against Watford.
Is Robbie O'Flynn's mission for the next 6 weeks, basically, is that going to be season defining for Cork?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think the pace that cornerbacks now have, evidently Clare have massive pace. Cork needed inside forwards with massive pace, and they went with, I suppose, consistency and
the bigger physicality.
But Cork didn't show that yesterday.
Right.
And Clare were walking out with the ball. They were walking into midfield, and I genuinely mean walking into midfield. And then they were being allowed to pick and choose the shots that they brought into their forward line. And for the Cork backs, it must have been incredibly frustrating to see the Clare lads walk out with the ball and deliver ball of their choosing. And considering the pressure that was being applied to Patrick Horgan was lucky to stay on the field because he was being roasted by Hayes in the wings, in the corners. He was only getting meaningful ball around the square, and that's where he got his scores.
We got a question earlier actually about Pat Horgan. Is he a passenger off the ball too much?
Yesterday he was, and previously against Waterford I thought his work rate was better. He was going back further the field, he was more interested in the game. Yesterday from the outset I think Rory Hayes got into his head, but late on, and this is what my dad said to me, the best players can find scores, and he mixed the sublime with the ridiculous yesterday.
Just to give everybody an update on where we are with regards to this, right? So the final games are next Sunday in Temple Stadium in Thurles. It's Tip against Waterford, and obviously we assume the Tipperary is going to win that because Waterford are have not been at the races.
6s and 7s, yeah.
And then it's Limerick and Cork in the Gaelic grounds in Limerick. They throw in at the same time so that there's no significant advantage to throwing in later. And because of the 2 draws that there are now in the results, Clare have 6 points and are through. Tipperary have 4 points after their 3 games, and Cork have 3 points and Limerick have 3 points. So we could still have the All-Ireland champions going out. Would I be right in saying no? If they draw, Cork have slightly better scoring.
Yeah, it's 8-1
right
at the minute.
If Limerick win, they're through.
Yeah, so this is Cork's Munster final next Sunday. If they win, they're not going to be in a Munster final. It's going to be Tip and Clare. So I think from Cork's point of view this week, have to reevaluate everything about their work rate and look at this as their Munster final and an opportunity to knock out the All-Ireland champions, and they owe Limerick one.
Is there a possibility that, because I remember having that conversation with Anthony Nash after the first league game, am I mixing up Cork and Tip
yes,
here now?
Limerick won, or Cork beat Limerick in the first league game.
Yeah. And in the first half, everybody was complaining about their work rate, but actually they made tactical changes in the second half that actually allowed them. So there's an element of they can engineer it to it.
They didn't engineer it yesterday though, and there was a real slowness yesterday to make changes. So at half time we were expecting 2 or 3 changes. Didn't happen. Tommy O'Connell got roasted in that first 10 minutes and then got injured, was taken off, was brought back on. And in that period, Tony Kelly was tipping around the park. Now, he had 4 or 5 different markers yesterday. I'm not putting it on Tommy O'Connell because Brian Roche tried to mark him, Sean O'Donoghue tried to mark him. He was unmarkable.
Did they get to grips with him as the game went on in terms of his scoring? Didn't his scoring stop after he 2-4 fairly quickly, and then afterwards?
I don't think so. I think he was opening up pockets for other players. And you look at Shane O'Donnell late on, they engineered the penalty. There was so many different things. And then crucially for me, the big switch was Brian Lohan brings in Shane O'Morey, and the amount of ball he carried in that late spell. Cork high press wasn't available, and he's pulling ball out of that back line. And look, John Conlon was, a massive game for him, and he was tired late on. There was the target point, and at that point Shane O'Morey comes in and he's just sweeping up around him, bringing ball up the field.
If Tony Kelly is unmarkable though, if he's in that form, like what should Pat Ryan do? It's nearly, is it defeatist to say, I understand this is a generational talent you're talking about here.
The thing is, I've seen Tony Kelly be marked. So I saw.
Yeah, he has been.
I saw Rec mark him last year, and did such a good job for Wexford that Wexford were still in that game in that second half. Cork don't have a player of that calibre to tag a player like Tony Kelly, and in that sense, then their forwards have to work incredibly hard. Cork's forwards have to work incredibly hard to allow them to basically compensate for the fact that they have a player who's incredibly loose and he needs to be marked. You can't give Tony Kelly the kind of ball that he was given yesterday. That's why the Cork forwards were to blame yesterday, because they just didn't work hard enough, and Clare were setting up the scores for Tony.
This is a problem for Cork for a few years now, isn't it? I mean, this is what you had hoped Pat Ryan would change. They went back to old habits, like you said.
But they worked so hard against Waterford.
But why is that? Is that because they're coming up against much better quality? They're like, can't be bothered with this.
I think the boys think they're genuinely Benjamin Button. Like, this time at the top is finite, as Katie Taylor proved on Saturday night. And some of these Cork lads have been at the top of the tree for an incredibly long time, and they think they're Benjamin
Top
Button.
of what tree?
Is it
the Cork tree?
Is it not,
and
though?
That seems to be enough.
Is there not an element of it, though, that they're doing what they're told? Do you know what I mean? That
doing what they're told. That wasn't doing what you're told yesterday.
But do you know what the game plan was? That's what I mean. Like, is it how did the league game transform from one half to the second half with tactical changes? I'm asking, is there more to this than just effort? Because you work all season long, and again, they're only beaten by a point at the end by the team who now we think are the second favourites.
I'm talking about hands on their hips yesterday and lads being able to walk out the ball. Late on in the second half, John Conlon actually gets to walk 3 steps and then decides whether he wants to lob it or give a direct pass to hand.
And so is that positioning? They've gone zonal instead of with a press. Do you know what I mean?
But you see, one can't go and the rest sit.
Well, so then that's
organisationally,
that's a tactical thing as opposed to effort, I would argue.
It's both. Because if one went and none of the rest went.
Well, that was happening repeatedly, you were saying, right? Mm-hmm. So were you glancing over to the bench to see what Ryan was doing? Like, what was his body language like when that was happening?
I was on the other side of the field.
Oh, yeah.
I was too far. What I was looking at, I was like, where's Tim O'Mahony? Where's Shane Kingston? Where's Jeremy Ellerick? I was looking for Brian Hayes. I was looking for Patrick Power. I was wondering where the changes were coming, because I said, these boys on the field do not deserve to be here right now. They're not working hard enough.
But is there any chance, as Ger alluded to there, that Ryan's saying to them, leave them have it there? Is there any chance that's happening?
We're happy that the wrong
that
person,
occasion.
Clare are going to get the wrong people with the ball in their hands.
You've got Peter Duggan inside. You've got Shane O'Donnell inside. You've got Tony Kelly inside. I'll keep going. Like, there's no player in that Clare setup who you can give the ball to. And evidently, with Dermot Ryan becoming the saviour, and getting 4 points and being, having an outrageous second half. We talked about him last year. I was incredibly impressed with him last year. Yesterday was his defining game in the Clare jersey. So you can't even allow him to have the ball.
Did Cork look fit to you?
I thought they looked tired, and probably epitomised by Dara Fitz. He'd have fits and bursts, and then he'd disappear out of the game.
Can we talk about Clare for a few minutes? Because I actually haven't checked the bookies' prices at the moment, but Will's power rankings will be along later this week, I presume. Yeah, okay.
Wednesday.
So, I think people would still have Limerick top, just on the basis of Limerick being Limerick, and then after that, it's one from Clare, Tip, and Kilkenny, I suspect, and maybe Galway. We haven't seen Galway. Galway haven't done enough yet, I don't think. So, is that about right?
I'd agree. I do think, though, that Clare are having to play their Munster final every week. So I think there's a lot of energy being expended now. and Galway and Kilkenny are sitting back and putting up cricket scores and allowing kind of the team to get into a groove and find.
Well, that's always been the way. With
Absolutely.
And in the championships.
Yeah, and I suppose are Clare disadvantaged by that? Absolutely.
So you think that this has taken more out of Clare, like, because last year obviously the Munster final, the performance was so spectacular, but it turns out now that Wexford team, judging on this year, not that good and still ran them close, and then obviously Kilkenny just absolutely annihilated them when they got the chance. So that was the end of Clare's season last year, it turned out. But this year, if they were to win a Munster final, does that have an impact from a psychological perspective, and does it give them energy?
Hugely so. And look, I suppose from their point of view as well, Mark Rogers, Ryan Taylor, Aidan McCarthy, Clare have added, real quality and to the team this year, and they really are working harder, so they do have more to add. But Kilkenny and Galway are getting to sit back. Liam Collins scored a goal yesterday for Galway, a lovely goal late on. These are the kind of players that Henry Shefflin's able to look at now because there's no pressure on, and he's gaining confidence week on week.
Yeah. Look, I think it's ridiculous that one of the best 4 teams in the country is going to be out of the race for Liam McCarthy because of something or other.
I want to ask you, I don't want to make this a leading question, so I'm not going to mention our county by name, but who's knocking you out of Munster?
With the performance delivered against Clare, it's Cork.
Even though they're away in the bare pit of Ennis and they only lose by a point against a team who we think could win the All-Ireland.
Cork don't have a Cathal Barrett. Cathal Barrett had an immense game against Seamus Flanagan. He was immense all through, and I just think Cork... Damien Callahan yesterday, lads, I rarely give him praise. I thought he was exceptional yesterday. He did a massive job on Peter Duggan, and the backs around him were asleep, and that's why they conceded the goal to Tony Kelly.
But can a system not override individual brilliance? Because you're naming individuals there that, like, we don't, Cork don't have this, Cork don't have that. If that's the case, fair enough, but surely there's a way to counteract.
It starts with the forwards, and I'm really, really cross today about the forward movement. And you had to be in Ennis yesterday to see it, because there's so much stuff off the ball that you don't see on the cameras. And yesterday they were walking out. They were 5 or 6 yards off their player. Tony Kelly in the first half, Kieran Joyce actually sits off him. Kieran Joyce did okay yesterday. He sits off him, allows him to win the ball, and then goes in to try and block him. That's madness. Tony Kelly does not.
So it sounds like there's still an uncertainty about what they're trying to do as a collective, as opposed to because I think that would have been one of the complaints of the previous team, is that there was fits and starts and that there was great athleticism in bursts, but that there wasn't an overarching structure. And it appears as if some of those same problems are still there.
They were evident yesterday. And the irony is here, Cork were in it to the 74th minute, and it was a brilliant game, and I loved being in the game. And then today, with the benefit of hindsight, very cross. So that's where I'm at.
I do want to talk about the other game, obviously, Tipperary and Limerick. Tip got what they needed out of it and have established themselves now as a team who really believes in the manager, who gets sent off at the very end. And, they're all at it. And even after the full-time whistle, they're at it again. Big moment for a young Tipperary team. So obviously the old dogs are still there, and the McGraths, what can you say about the McGraths? But the kid goalkeeper, everything that we heard
Shelley,
about him, very accurate with his puck outs, and then listen to Tommy Walsh going, he was like Rory McIlroy out there.
Well, he scored a massive point, 45 from inside his own 45 as well. He gets on the scoreboard, did everything that he was supposed to do, but it wasn't just that. I suppose there were so many angles to that game yesterday. Well,
yeah, Limerick were really good as well.
I thought Tom Morrissey's in the running for hurler of the year. He keeps popping up. He's just been incredible when Limerick have been playing badly, in the way that Tony Kelly was incredible for Clare when Clare were playing badly. Kyle Hayes, outstanding yesterday. With Cian Lynch struggling, and lots of different people have now said that Cian Lynch isn't looking as good as he was in the league, because in the league, I said, geez, he's absolutely, he's pinning this team together. Is it time to bring Kyle Hayes into centre forward? And unfortunately for Cork, Limerick could decide to put Kyle Hayes centre forward next Sunday. And that could be a big problem for Cork that they haven't dealt with at all this year.
How have Limerick found themselves in a position like, the all-conquering hurling team of the country, akin to Dublin footballers a few years ago? How have they found themselves in a situation where yesterday they could have exited the Munster Championship?
There's these legacy moments that Dublin had when they were playing Mayo over the years, and before they obviously reached the 6 in a row. Limerick missed yesterday an opportunity to get to their, I suppose, to achieve a 5th Munster title. They had 4 in a row. They were going for 5. It hadn't been done before. That's in the back of their minds yesterday, and they've now missed that opportunity.
A game at home, a full Gaelic grounds, you would make them favourites against this Cork team?
100%, no question. And with all they've achieved in the last 4 years, I think Cork are massive underdogs going into this game. And there's lads in that Cork setup are playing for their careers.
Barry Nash sent off yesterday Limerick. Like, they're just associated with sendings off this season, aren't they? Like,
I thought that was quite light. In all of the sendings off all season, that's been the one that was probably the most tepid.
Like, if a player gets sent off, it's going to make news, right? Is this actually a big deal for Limerick overall? Is their discipline a problem? You've touched on this before previously.
Yeah, I have. I thought they were playing too close to the edge, or they were over the edge in previous games. I think they've tidied up their challenges over the past couple of games, and you've seen that, and maybe that's impacting their overall gameplay because they're not getting the breaks that they were when they were being more physical. So maybe that's, I suppose, a struggle for the team, is that they've dialed it down a tone, and now they're not getting the breaks that they were. And
they're on the brink of elimination, but would you still have them favourites to win the All-Ireland?
That's an incredibly difficult question. If they do a job against Cork, which I think they will, they'll sit back and watch Clare and Tip beat 7 shades out of each other, and they will come back into the All-Ireland series gunning for road. And realistically, they'll be in the best possible position to, I suppose, go through the All-Ireland series.
Yeah. Now, am I right in saying, they're more than likely going to have Galway?
Wouldn't be a problem.
In Croker?
At that stage. Based on what I saw last year with Cork and Galway in the quarter-final, I think it's the best possible time to get Galway.
Sorry, I'm trying to find the odds here and it's just taking me too long. But
if you consider that Galway and Kilkenny have had very little competition coming into this, I suppose, All-Ireland phase, the best possible time to get either one of those teams is at the quarter-final phase.
The first bit. We have to talk about Westmeath and Wexford. So Westmeath's comeback is La Rochelle-esque.
With the 17 points, I saw that on Twitter.
Sorry, Tip are second favourites to win the All-Ireland at the moment. Clare are third favourites. Galway are fourth favourites, and Kilkenny, for some reason, with the bookmakers, are fifth. Those power rankings are wrong. Just want to tell you all out there that that's wrong.
Objectively incorrect.
But it doesn't make any sense, because a much better chance of Kilkenny reaching a
semi-final, and a final. Sure.
Bookmakers never get it wrong, though, right? Well, they do, it turns out.
You're asking about Wexford.
I was, yeah.
Yeah, and Westmeath.
It's been a long weekend.
As it has been for me in Ennis, up and down the country. Yeah. Look, Westmeath, we talked about complacency with Limerick, and you know what? There's an opportunity for complacency at the bottom too. I think Wexford went out yesterday saying our only challenge left is Kilkenny. Let's keep something in the tank for them. And fair play to the Bear on the Square, Niall Mitchell. Look, Westmeath, there's a lad from Cork in the backroom team for Westmeath, Paul O'Donoghue, and I'll have to mention him. They've been putting in massive effort, and that result is their defining result of their season.
Yeah. Sorry, no, it's kind of understandable Wexford took their foot off the gas a bit, isn't it? They were miles ahead.
No, hang on. In the middle of the game.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
They're so far ahead.
The quality that was still on that field late on, you've got Chin, you've got Rory O'Connor, you've got Conor MacDonald. These are players who would make the starting team of any other county. For them to switch off in that manner is disrespectful. Jackie Turley used the word spineless. I disagree with that word. I think that's too harsh. But I do think that they took their eye off the ball and they were caught.
You'd make Westmeath have strong favourites to beat Antrim in the final round, so
I wouldn't.
Maybe, no? But maybe Wexford don't get relegated. But they've put it. There's a possibility that they get relegated. The pall of Offaly hangs over Wexford now. If they were to get relegated, it's unbelievable, unconscionable.
The fact that Wexford team took Tip, to the brink of an All-Ireland semi-final, a number of years ago. They're Leinster champions. They've showed so much quality. The fact that they've beaten Kilkenny and have been probably a mark on Brian Cody's managerial career a number of times, to fall to the Joe McDonagh so quickly, unfathomable.
Before you go, I have to ask you about Donal Logan's comments about Tailteann Cup.
Totally disrespectful. And as the president of the GPA, which I think he is, I think he did a massive disrespect to the players within the GPA who are part of those Tailteann Cup teams, and there are second and third tier clubs all over the country, which Martin Fogarty spoke so eloquently about, and he spoke about the passion, you know, in the hurling side of things, in the likes of Westmeath, in the likes of Sligo, in the likes of Mayo. The same applies in football, and they have to be given equal store, certainly from a player's perspective, and that's what Donald Oak has been first and foremost. And I'm incredibly disappointed that he took the opportunity to take a cut when there wasn't a need to.
I think this is all a mountain out of a molehill, to be honest. I thought that yesterday was manufactured nonsense. Look at this, look at this. Who cares? Shut up, both of you, move on. That's what I felt.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's a week too old, that story.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
I don't think you should have said it in the first place.
No, yeah, I just wanted to hear what you thought about it. Yeah, because it's getting a bit tiring now, because he was in the headlines 2 weeks ago, so with the GA goal comments. You know what I mean?
I mean, technically, his point, which he was making yesterday, which was very laborious, and the accusation of not being quoted properly was like just ridiculous. Nobody wants to be in the Tailteann Cup, really. Like, Down don't want to be, Cavan don't want to be, Kildare sure as shit don't want to be, Cork didn't want to be, Clare didn't want to be. Like,
Westmeath were happy that they were, though, in the end, weren't they?
but they're not now.
I know, but last
Do you know
year.
what I mean? Well,
Yeah.
but nobody wants to be. So it is actually, they are disappointed. They are also rans.
Yeah, but there is something to
The
win.
technically
structure
correct.
isn't working, but it doesn't mean that the head of the GPA, who is an inclusive, diverse organisation, stands up and says that it's a meaningless competition that we're still going to look for funding for.
I don't think he said it was meaningless. That's the point. It's like,
As national,
do you know, like
the comment was,
a Grand National
For
for
also rans.
disappointed also rans. Yeah. I'd say he chose his every word carefully, and in fairness, the GPA are the only ones who are actually standing up for the Division 3 and 4 teams in terms of getting them there. It's certainly not county boards standing
No.
up, as we see with Kildare and all the bullshit that's gone on with the Camogie team there. So, like, I thought that the football crowd in particular got very snippy and very up on their high horses, which they're prone to do, even less so than the hurling crowd, right? But, and then to bring it up a week later, I'm like, come on.
that's the thing that I found the
What?
most frustrating.
And then for like, oh, you didn't cry. She did. Why are we even talking about this? I blame you, Colin.
I had to ask you, you're right here.
17 minutes
I knew
past
you
He's
were
a
9.
fellow
Say about it.
Corkman, I know.
Yeah.
17 minutes past 9. That price, Uncle Kenny, is too big, by the way. Sarah, good stuff. Thanks,
Thanks.